We are missing something. That is how my guest today, Cindy Watson, felt when they were not offering ABA services for their clients. Cindy Watson has been on the podcast 3 times. This is her 3rd time on the show. She is a speech language pathologist, and she's the co-founder of Children's Therapy Team. Her and Abby Snavely came onto the show. Abby is a BCBA and the director of ABA at Team, and we had a great conversation today. They are all about collaboration. How can we provide collaborative services for our students so that we can keep things fun and functional? And I'll tell you what they really do great at Cindy's clinic is they have open communication. They have communication, they have training, they have a lot of embedded supports into the clinic for AAC or for students who have behavior that is a barrier to their learning. So you get to take a little peek into how this clinic that is offering interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary services really ticks. Cindy has been on the show 3 times. She is in the ABA Speech Connection, our CEU membership for speech therapists, BCBAs, and RBTs. And she came on the show first to talk about early intervention. That's one of our most listened to episodes. We're going to link that in the show notes. And she also came on with her daughter, MC, to talk about autism in girls a year ago. I mean, I think, Cindy, this is an annual thing. I know that in this podcast, you will learn all about how to provide collaborative services, how to have open communication, and if there's a problem, how to troubleshoot that as well. I'm Rose Griffin, a speech therapist, board-certified behavior analyst, and founder of ABA Speech. It wasn't all that long ago that I felt overwhelmed by providing therapy for my autistic students and any students who were not yet speaking. Fast forward through many doubts, tears, research, and courses, and you will see the framework that I use today and share with over 60,000 readers weekly. One that will help you support your students and feel more confident in the process. I created the ABA Speech podcast to give you simple, step-by-step strategies to help you reach all of your students wherever they are on their communication journeys. If you're a speech therapist, BCBA, RBT student, or parent who's looking to help all students develop a way to communicate with the world, you are in the right place, friend. Let's get started. We have a great conversation today with actually, Cindy, you might be the most frequent flyer here on the podcast. I think this is your 3rd episode on. I will put in the show notes the other times that you've been on. I know one time we talked about early intervention. That's actually one of our most popular podcasts and topics. So shout out for that. And then we also have Abby Snavely with us. Thank you so much for joining us and coming on to the show.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm excited.
And we're going to talk about a very important topic today, one that I discuss almost daily on social media. I posted something that was actually a trend today on my Instagram. And I think it was this trend where you're like walking forward, then you see something and then you turn around. And it was all about me going up to a speech therapist and then me hearing them say ABA is abuse. And then I just turned right back around and had the opposite direction. So taped that on the golf course yesterday, got to make it fun. But we're going to talk about SLP BCBA collaboration. So something I know that you are all doing so well. Can you just tell us a little bit about each of your roles, I guess, if you're new to the show, and also how you got started on this collaboration journey?
I'll let you introduce yourself first, and then I'll talk about how we got started.
Yes. Well, my name's Abby Snavely. I'm a BCBA, and I'm the director of the ABA clinic over here in Bentonville. I started with Team during COVID, so about 5 years ago, and I actually started off as a speech pathology student. And so I do have a deep appreciation for all the speeches because I know those classes are not easy and they are brainiacs. But I did end up switching to become a BCBA, and I've been a BCBA for a couple of years now.
That's great. That's great to have that background. Very cool.
Yeah. Yes. And that's actually, besides Abby being the director of our ABA clinic, I thought she would bring an interesting perspective to the table because she does have her bachelor's in communication disorders, but then she was an RBT as a as a college student in the communication disorders field. And then when it came time for grad school, she chose to continue on as a BCBA. So with talking about the collaboration, she actually has knowledge of both fields. And so that's why, like I said, besides being a leader for us, having her knowledge of both areas. But I've been a pediatric speech language pathologist in Northwest Arkansas. On August 1st, it'll be my 30th anniversary. I love early intervention, but I love just intervention with kids that have communication disorders. Kim Hannah, the other co-founder of Children's Therapy Team, this is time escapes me, but I think it's been about 10 years. I actually was thinking about it last night when we started dipping our toes into the water of the behavior management and looking into, okay, we can do better. Kim is a PT. I already mentioned I'm an SLP. And when we were walking through the clinic, we would hear kids, in a crisis, maybe not enjoying therapy. And we were like, we can do better. We're missing something. We're great in our areas of expertise, but what are we missing on positive reinforcement, behavior management, making therapy fun and functional? And that's when we started looking more into ABA, having BCBAs here on staff. That's it in a nutshell. There's a lot more to it, but it was like, as therapy clinic owners, we wanted to support our therapists. It wasn't like we expect you to know these things, because we all go through school, and behavior management is just a drop in the bucket, if that, besides, in the learning of our fields. And so it wasn't anything against our therapists. It was like, we haven't given them the tools to use. So it just seemed like the right fit. After researching, ABA just seemed practical because it's evidence-based. There's research behind it. Of course, you can see places that are not doing it right. And I feel like sometimes I get upset because that's what gives ABA a bad name. But you find the places that are doing it right, and the clients are flourishing. The therapy that's happening is engaging, wonderful, and all the good things. So that's kind of where, as a clinic that does PT, OT, and speech, we felt like we needed to give our therapists the tools to manage behaviors, to see progress, and what can we do to make this better for everyone? Because as a therapist, too, if you have a child in crisis mode, it can be a lot on you. You can feel bad because you're like, I don't know what to do. You can feel angry because you're like, why aren't they sitting at the table? I'm just asking them to sit at the table. So it's helpful for everyone involved.
Yeah. And I think you make a good point. Is in my undergrad and master's program, I really never I never took a class on autism. I never really learned about how to work with learners who were not sitting at the table, who not yet speaking, who didn't respond to the traditional therapy. And so I was working at the Cleveland Clinic, and I was working with students who did not respond to the traditional therapy and just could not be in a public school setting. And so that's really where I fell in love with ABA and thought, wow, you can put speech therapy and ABA together, and we can help the kids who are hard to help, because otherwise they're slipping through the cracks. And you're right, the staff don't feel supported. I actually started a behavior course. It's a 1-hour course about how to support students with behavioral barriers. And I started that because a clinic reached out to me a couple years ago and said, we have this need and we would love for you to talk about this with your speech and BCBA background. So it was really cool how it just organically came to be. It's one of our most popular courses, and it's in the ABA Speech Connection as a recording. So, okay, so interesting that you talk about that, because we're going to cover this topic in many different ways this year at ABA Speech, as far as like, we have a clinic that offers, maybe you had PT and SLP for sure, because that's what the partners were offering. And then eventually you're adding in ABA services. And so I work with there was a group of 200 that joined the ABA Speech Connection from Cicero Therapy Partners, and they are offering all the different therapies as well. And every location, they have about 7 across the United States, is in a different phase of offering ABA services and speech services and OT and all of those things. And I know that that can be tricky at first, especially when you start as speech and maybe PT and OT maybe as well. So what are some of those things that we should consider kind of in those early stages of collaboration? If people are listening and they're like, okay, I work at a speech clinic and now the owner said we're going to start offering ABA too. I think sometimes people can feel rattled by that. So how did you kind of enter into that dialogue with people, Cindy, about how you were going to add in ABA?
Well, I'll be honest, sometimes it is. It's a buy-in almost kind of a thing. They are going to add this. But I think the biggest thing, like I've mentioned and you reiterated, is the support.
Right.
But just we had large group trainings where we offered it because we do have lots of therapists and 3 locations. And so we offer time to kind of give them an update, the background. We can't teach you, we can't certify you in ABA, but we can give you, the background, why it's used and things like that. So we started with that, and then just how this would help the clients, but also help them. And so I think the education piece is a big part of it. Mm-hmm. And also, we set up a team who really wanted to dig in. Abby was mentioning that before we started about we have something called our BILT team, which is BILT instead of the traditional spelling of BILT, but it's Behavior Intervention Leadership Team. And we wanted to make sure we had someone. Our goal is to have 2 people at every location who's a member of that team. Mm-hmm. And we did more training with them than we did with the overall staff. So mm-hmm. that if someone is in crisis mode, they can reach out to those BILT team members. And the BILT team members aren't our BCBAs. We reach out to our BCBAs when it's beyond what we can do because they're the experts. So we always say if it's a self-injurious behavior, something where they're going to hurt themselves or hurt others, or it could be lots of different things, but in general, hurt themselves or hurt others, our BCBAs are here for that. They're the experts. We want them here. We want you to reach out to them. And they're so great to be like, okay, if they're not at this location, like I saw an email from Abby this weekend that was like, okay, I'll be there Monday at 2. And they're just like a mile and a half down the road
right.
But, at the ABA clinic. But I think that's it, is like the biggest thing is the education piece and then the support. It's kind of like when you go to continuing ed, you learn all these things and you come back and you hope to implement them. But
right.
when you implement them, you're like, I wish I could. I have one more question. Well, we have them here, so there's no reason. No one really has a reason to feel unsupported because we have those folks here. And like I said, you've got 2 of your peers, either PT, OT, and speech, who've had extensive training. Again, they're not ABA certified or anything, but they had the extra level of training. And then we can bump it onto our BCBAs. Just because there's a lot. I mean, I think when I was early on, I wish I would have known as much about behavior as I know now. I tell the students, because I've shared that before, I teach at the university level, and it's like, I would have been a better therapist. So I try to implement these things when I'm teaching them because I didn't get them, no fault on the university, but it was just not something that was discussed. And just knowing how to do those things. So that support. And I think that makes a world of difference if you can offer that.
I love that because that is the support. And that is what happens when you go to CEUs, you hear these great talks and then you come back and it's hard to implement like any kind of actionable item, because then you come back and you have all your emails and you have all the parents you need to talk to and you have the IEPs you have to write. So, and we try to do that in the ABA Speech Connection too, is just to have that touch point of a support, because oftentimes people don't have that type of support in their workplace, and it can be really tricky to not feel supported. So I think that's great that your team does feel that way. So what do you think are,
reiterate, like what, I'm sorry, but to like, so like if I was thinking about a smaller practice, I mean, we're very blessed and we can come
Right.
up with all these folks, but I would say to people listening, if they're in a smaller place or maybe don't have the resources, my understanding is they could reach out to you, right? To do that consultation kind of a situation. And so don't be afraid to reach out for help. I think sometimes as professionals, we get that way too. Like, I'm supposed to know this. It's like our field is so huge and ever changing, and every kid is different, every one of them. So that's the biggest thing, I think, is knowing like, you don't have to know everything. I don't know.
Right.
Get that out of your mind.
Yes, it's a mindset. Yes, I still do an onboarding call with everybody and that's probably how we met a long time ago, is an onboarding call with everybody who joins the ABA Speech Connection. So that's nice because I get to know about your workplace or your clients. And then if you happen to be on a live webinar, I've had a lot of people on the show, the podcast. So it's just nice because we are so far away geographically, but we all kind of have the same mission and work. And so that makes everybody feel united in this one way in the connection. So that is very fun. Thank you for mentioning that. There are so many benefits of SLP BCBA collaboration. What are a couple that you kind of see, Abby? Do you want to share about like maybe some things that you've seen when SLPs and BCBAs are able to collaborate?
Yeah, I think like when you put brains together, it's always best. And our whole goal is always to help the kid. And so the more people we can get on board for that, the better the quality of life is for the kiddo. And the quicker progress can be made sometimes. And that's really encouraging too. So I think that, the opportunities are endless. At team, we do a lot of collaboration for communication. So teaching the kid how to talk or use their device and that kind of thing. But also we do a lot of interdisciplinary feeding stuff. And so that's a totally different realm, but it's really intriguing and fun and creates a lot of progress in that aspect as well. And all of that is super meaningful to the individual and their families, and that keeps us motivated every day.
I love that. And I think we all win when we're able to collaborate. It's not just about the speech therapist winning, the BCBA winning, the student. Everybody just feels more of that ease when there's that, when people are combative. And I feel like we're all going to have some type of conflict. Like we all want to help, and sometimes we go about that in different ways. But that I always feel just so disheartened if I'm on a Facebook group or, I've seen people post things that say like, I'm going to put on my resume as a speech therapist that I don't work with any ABA providers. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like a blatant ethical violation. Like, I understand you want to advocate for maybe good ABA, or maybe you work in an area like Cindy said, not everybody is doing the best, right? And that's just as the field grows, we have to have more regulation and try to disseminate. But I just think that's so sad. So I think it's great that you have built this team with employees that all have this kind of shared vision of collaboration, because I don't think everybody feels that way. So that's super positive.
I have a true confession on that. Just if someone's listening, I can remember the first family probably 20 years ago that said, or team, I should say team. It wasn't just a family, but they said this child needs ABA before speech therapy. And I was so sassy because I was like, I am a great speech pathologist. They haven't even seen me yet,
Right.
like the planning. And I just remember being so like offended because it's like, now that I get it. Like you have to address the behaviors before the therapy can be done, before you can see the progress. But like I'm saying, I'm confessing, like I got my feelings hurt because I was like, they need No, we work together, but that child did need, and we do
Hmm.
still see that where kids need to do ABA
Hmm.
first just to learn some of the basic behavior principles so that we can get the most out of therapy. So if
Right.
someone says that to you, it's not an offense to you. It's
Hmm.
like what's best for the child, like you just said. That's our goal. And so if they need, and there are some kids who are very extreme and they do need that behavior first, we're
Hmm.
all going to move faster together and we just follow those steps. You're still collaborating. I wasn't kicked off the team or anything
Right.
like the worst speech therapist ever. No, we just needed to do these things so that my speech therapy would be more productive.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that. When I was working in non-public programs before I started ABA speech, I was working with students with very unsafe problem behavior. And it really never happened on my caseload, but there were definitely other students who were older students who engaged in very unsafe problem behavior. It was really unsafe for the team. Like these kids were in crisis. They were still coming to school. But, the speech therapist might transition to consult just for like a month or two until things were more stabilized. But I think that's nice when you're working together so closely and you do have that cohesive team. It's not saying like, oh, this student doesn't even need speech right now. It's just saying that, we're going to work together to help this student increase their communication, decrease problem behavior. And I think that when you make those judgment calls together as a team, it can feel really rewarding, to see the growth of a student who maybe couldn't even just be in a school type setting, right? And I'm sure you have those success stories. I was thinking about too, Cindy. I don't know if you remember this. This is a couple years ago. You were a video ambassador for ABA Speech. So you would send in videos, we'd have client release forums of what therapy could look like. I think that's the thing too, is what people don't understand is they may have seen ABA one place and it looked a certain way, or maybe they have gone to, I've had people say like, I went to a training and the speaker at ASHA or like some really, well-known conference bashed ABA, which seems so unprofessional, but it happens. And so I try to do that at ABA Speech is just to wake up every day and disseminate and say like, hey, look, see this kid playing a game or doing bubbles? This is ABA. This is what ABA can look like. Because I think people, like you said, have a mindset about what it is and what it is not. And so I think it's up to us, all of us that listen to the show, to be ambassadors for what integrating speech and ABA can look like, because the kids win and the staff wins. Like I can tell you have a really enriched workplace, and I'm sure people are feeling supported in their roles, even though it's not that the work is easy. It's just that when you have that level of support, you're like, okay, I can do this because I'm not doing it alone. And I think that's great. Not to say that everything's going to be perfect. So if you do have difficulty around SLP BCBA collaboration, what are some things that you do to kind of handle that? Because we're adults, we're humans, we're going to get into disagreements. How do you handle those at your clinic?
Yeah. I think it comes down to like one, being able to check yourself and your heart behind what's happening, of evaluating your own thoughts and your emotions and letting that kind of be dismissed to figure out what you need to do to alter the situation. I think too, everyone here wants to help each other. So no one's like, I'm better than you or I'm smarter than you. It always comes back to like, I want to help you, help them. So like, let's get this figured out. And most people, we really can just communicate through it and it's totally fine. And then we also have like the mentorship program so that if someone does need a little extra guidance or you want to talk it out, you have a trusted person so that we don't get into that toxic culture and the gossip and the drama stuff. We just don't do that. And we just always put the kid first and believe everyone has something to bring to the table. And so getting ourselves in that heart of, I want to learn from you, and I might not have the training you have, or I might have a different background than you, but I want to do what's best for them. And so I'm going to kind of put whatever is offending me behind and like learn from this opportunity.
I think that's great. I think sometimes when you're working in situations like in a clinical environment, some of my very best friends that were actually in my wedding, I'm still close to today. I met at the Cleveland Clinic because we were working in an ABA program. I call it a non-behavioral program on Instagram, so people don't, say things that are mean. But it was an ABA clinic, and it was great. I mean, I loved it because we were helping kids who were like, some were young, but some were like 18, had no way to communicate, and they engaged in unsafe, aggressive behavior because they were frustrated, right? They had been in speech therapy since the age of 3 and had not made any progress. And, it's just hard because sometimes district employees, and I'm a district employee 2 days a week, you just don't always see kids that present like that. So sometimes it's really jarring and you're just not sure how to even get started because you're like, okay, this kid doesn't sit at a table and they haven't been receptive to anything that we've tried and they're not making progress. So it's just nice that you guys have that collaboration. I think you do bond with people in those times where you're just working towards that common goal, and it's kind of an intense process. AAC is something that we talk about a lot at ABA Speech. I just recently did a talk for Motivity, and it's also in the ABA Speech Connection called Intro to AAC. And in October, which is AAC month, we're going to do a couple AAC courses that are really about collaboration because we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but I feel like people want all the AAC content. Do you guys have any words of wisdom about collaborating around AAC? I feel like that is a tricky topic for speech therapists and BCBAs.
As far as the collaboration part, I can think of a time when we did have, I think the last big, I don't know, where everybody wanted to lock horns was BCBA and a speech pathologist who's very passionate about AAC. But it was approached like Abby was said, let's all sit down, let's all talk about this, and remember why we're doing it. It's not because I'm the AAC expert and this is what I know we need to do, and I'm the behavior specialist and but this is Johnny and what does Johnny need? So that has been probably, I don't know, 8-ish years ago. And that was really hard because there are some things with, the basics on ABA and how it goes with an AAC device and the way that we can teach, the way we're taught to teach AAC and the way that they may approach using AAC. So I think that would be my thing, is just like you said, making sure you have someone to go to instead of all these side conversations about, can you believe this? Can you believe this? Let's just sit down together instead of making a big ruckus about it. But I think, again, it goes back to training. That's something too that we have that's separate. There's just so many areas in what we do. So we also have an AAC team where we have people who are more trained in that area. And again, we have one of those people on site at all of our facilities. So if a device does crash, I don't panic and freak out. I can go get this person and they can help me through it. So I think support goes so far in all the things we do, because like I said, I can't speak because I already shared, I've done this for 30 years, but I do feel like we have such a huge field. And as I said, every kid's different. We have 1,500 kids a week that come in for therapy. Wow. And so you just think you've got to have all those pieces in place so that, hey, I can pull this person if I need help with literacy, if I need help with AAC, if I need help with behavior, and that support is what is needed.
I love that. That's great. What did you want to share, Abby?
I think too, it comes back to like being curious, because when I was in school for becoming a behavior analyst, we didn't learn anything about an AAC. Of course, that's like not our scope. And so I think part of it is stay in your lane where you need to stay in your lane, but also like be curious and ask very respectful questions and continue learning. But also something like behavior analysts are so good at is taking data. So like finding a way that you can be helpful in the process and then being able to present that so that ultimately we're making database decisions for every individual and then taking, the best pieces of each of us to create the best experience for that person.
Yeah, I think that's great you bring that up because in my work with clinical organizations, I work with some pretty large organizations and they have an AAC department. And so they talked about like how the BCBAs are really instrumental in exactly what you said, taking data. So there might be a speech therapist that steers the ship in some of the organizations I've worked with on the AAC evaluation, but they are really leaning into the BCBA, the parents at home when they're doing this AAC assessment to say like, hey, can you take data on this? We really want to know what is going to resonate with the learner before we, get the app or do the thing, right? And like go all in on this one particular app. So yeah, data is definitely our jam. And I think it depends on everybody. So different. We actually have this lady, Dr. Cindy Gavarder. She is a BCBA D and she has an AAC lab out west. And so she specializes in that. And she presents at ASHA and she does a ton of research and she's a BCBA. So I feel like it's like we never really know, right? Like who's going to have what level of expertise. I remember as a speech therapist, I took an AAC class and I'm sorry, it was a terrible class. It just wasn't taught well in graduate school. I didn't learn anything. And I really didn't learn anything until I was immersed in working at the Cleveland Clinic, working with students who used AAC. I mean, I would say 90% of my caseload were kids who used AAC. And it was kind of like, okay, you're going to learn this now because this is really important, right? Kind of like you're saying, Abby, like you probably learned a lot in your current work setting about AAC because if you're supporting students like that, it's like, okay, I want to help these kids. So I need to learn this.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's important. Do you have anything else you want to share about SLP BCBA collaboration? If there are other clinic owners or people that are working in multidisciplinary clinics, or somebody maybe is working somewhere and they're going to add a service, do you have anything to share that would make people feel a little bit better about that process?
I think the biggest thing that I would share is kind of goes back to what Abby said too about your purpose and being there, just it, I feel like it's changed the dynamics at team since we've been able to plug in the behavior analyst and help us do our job better. I just say don't be close-minded to it. I think when I was digging in, I just had to kind of flip that switch. And I know sometimes it's not that easy to flip, but open mind and reading about it. I am 53, I'm older, I've lived a lot of life, but being open-minded gets me a lot further than being closed-minded. And deep down, why I started my career back in the early 90s, going to school and things, doing the training to become a speech pathologist, it was to help kids. It was to help kids communicate. It was, whatever I could do to make their lives better. And right now, I feel like because of, where we are, we're seeing more behaviors. I don't know why, but I feel like, it's definitely more than what I saw starting out in 1995. So whatever I can do, whatever tool I need to put in my toolbox, I'm going to do it. I mean, and like I said, I guess this summer I'm actually teaching on ethics with our grad students. It's really what we're called to do. Ethically, we have to know what's out there and stay up. There's actually, it was actually good for me to dig into the code of ethics because I read through them. They did an update not too long ago and I read through them, but we've taken the whole summer to really study them, which everybody's kind of like, oh, there's some good in it because it calls us to stay up, to be sure that we're getting the continuing ed, to make sure we're not doing, doesn't say it this easy, but this is the Cindy version. We're not doing the things the same way every day, or that we were doing 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So ethically, as speech language pathologists, I can speak to that. That is my lane. We're supposed to stay up on those things. And ABA is one of those things that's out there. Like I mentioned in the beginning, it's evidence-based. There's research behind it. It's hard to argue with that for me. So if your passion is to help kids, dig in with an open mind and see how this could help the clients that you're working with. Maybe it's not for every kiddo. maybe it's not, but maybe try it with one that you've tried everything else with. And maybe this is that thing. You never know till you try it. So that would be my thought. I don't know if that really gave you what you wanted, but I think, yeah, that's where what is on my heart to share.
Yeah, I think too, like when you can kind of get away from what you've read on the internet about ABA or maybe things you've heard or experienced in the past and just finding a behavior analyst that fits your same values so that you guys can run the path together and just enjoy the journey, then it can be a really fun and helpful relationship and collaborationship. But it really does come down to just finding the best match and someone that you guys have the same end goal, the same values you're working with, and I think it can be beautiful.
And our end goal should be the same, right? If it's not, then it's going to be a struggle the whole way. But on a personal note, we were struggling. My 16-year-old has a diagnosis of autism, and the minute we were starting to see increases in the escaping behaviors, escaping school, the first person I called was one of our BCBAs because I had been down that road and I was like, I know who to call. So it's just like anything else. Your tooth hurts, call a dentist, right?
Right.
And I'm a speech pathologist, but guess what? I didn't call her speech pathologist. She was escaping school. She wasn't wanting to go to school, and we had to figure out a way to get her to school and to reward those days and then try to extinguish the escaping. But that's just on a personal note as a mom too. It was like, I know the people that are going to be able to help us. And then, so my husband and I did parent training, and my husband was kind of at first like, and then he started reading more about it, and he was like, this is like with everyone, like this is stuff you do with everyone. I was like, yes, hers just happens to be more inflamed or whatever at times, or intense. And so that's just like I said, on a personal note. And I'm happy if anybody wanted to reach out to me about our experiences, because I know girls and teenagers and struggles at school and stuff are hard, super hard. But don't be afraid to reach out to those behavior analysts because they know what they're talking about.
I love that.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to correct one thing I said, because there are a lot of hard things out there on the internet and a lot aren't true. And so I just wanted to correct that those things are really hard and we don't really want that to happen either. And so when you are learning to collaborate with BCBAs, like it does take something in our field to like acknowledge what we've done incorrectly and then make change. And so I just wanted to throw that out there as well, because I did not want to, let that fly off the radar either.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you know what, Cindy, that's you were on the show. The first time you were on the show, we talked about early intervention. Last summer you were on the show, you and your daughter were on the show. So we'll link both of those podcast episodes. And congratulations, because you are the most wanted podcast guest that we've had on the ABA Speech podcast. And I think we're going to hit in the fall, episode 250. I'm going to have my kids. I have 3 kids, so they're going to interview me for that show. Last year with episode 200, my husband interviewed me. So, just to keep it a little lively and things like that. So, well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's always great to connect. Thank you so much for being a part of the ABA Speech Connection. That is our CEU membership for speech therapists, BCBAs, and RBTs now, because, that certification CEU is coming in 2026 for RBTs. So we're doing courses for everybody. And we will link the show notes, the other podcast episodes that Cindy has been on. One was about early intervention and one was you and your daughter. And that was a really great podcast. And one that we try to cover often is autism in girls, because it's not talked about enough. So thank you so much for coming on the show. It's great to connect with both of you.
It's always good to be with you again.
So much. Yes.
Thanks for having us.